Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and it is finally here. We are at January 20th. The new OGL 1.2 survey has dropped, and I figured it would be interesting to go over it in a video with you guys so we can see what kind of either greatness or garbage that Wizards of the Coast is proposing for the OGL changes. Like I said, we knew they were coming. There's no way of stopping a change to the OGL, so we may as well at least cover what Wizards is doing. Really, more likely, what Papa Hasbro is doing and Wizards is being forced to lick the boot of. And maybe, at the end, this could be good for us D&D players. And if not, well, at least we're able to share the message of what they're trying to pull over us. So, let's take a look here. Thank you for participating in this survey. The survey will cover the proposed OGL 1.2 and will also provide an opportunity to share more generalized feedback. Our goal is to measure both the clarity of the proposed OGL 1.2 and the D&D community's feedback on its contents. You can save your responses and come back to them later, but responses are completely finalized once submitted. Please do not exit your browser without saving or submitting. Use the Save and Continue Survey Later button to save your responses for later, and please do not leave any personally identifiable information, name, email, etc., in any open text fields. Well, my stuff is going to be openly available, at least the stuff that's not going to, get me in any sort of trouble, because I'm going to be showing you guys as I fill out this survey so we can go through it together. You're going to see my responses. You may agree with some, may disagree with some, but at the end of the day, this is for the game we all love, and hopefully we're going to stick it to WotC. So let's go through here. So as for the proposed OGL 1.2, we're going to go through it together before we fill out the survey, and let's check it out. For over 20 years, thousands of creators have helped grow the tabletop RPG community using a shared set of game mechanics that are the foundation for their unique worlds and other creations. We don't want that to change, and we've heard loud and clear that neither do you. So here we're doing two things. One, we're giving the core D&D mechanics to the community through a Creative Commons license, which means they are fully in your hands. Two, if you want to use quintessentially D&D content from the SRD, such as Owlbears and Magic Missile, OGL 1.2 will provide you a perpetual, irrevocable license to do so. Well, like I said in the previous video when I was covering this, remember how things sound too good to be true? They probably are. Let's continue, but that, out the gate, it sounds like they're meeting all of our demands, and I just can't see Wizards of the Coast meeting all of our demands. Creative Commons is a non-profit dedicated to sharing knowledge, and it developed a set of licensees that let creators do that. The Creative Commons license let us give everyone those core mechanics. Forever, because we don't control the license, releasing the D&D core rules under the Creative Commons will be a decision we can never change. They still haven't used the word irrevocable, which, as we covered, is a must, a necessity, but maybe they'll get to that in a bit. Let's talk about OGL 1.2 and the important ways it's different than 1.0a. First, it allows us to address hateful content. Second, it only applies to be published tabletop RPG content, including on VTTs. Third, this license specifically includes the word irrevocable. Well, there it is. First, but what I'm worried about, first it allows us to address hateful content. I don't like that, because that's completely subjective. What is hateful? I don't like the idea that some company can change their open gaming license to lord over us what sort of content they consider hateful or wrong speech or wrong think or anything to that effect. This is something that could get out of hand very quickly. So that is something that when I fill out the survey, I'm absolutely going to address. There should be no concept of hateful content. I mean, at the end of the day, if someone is going to use the OGL to make money or whatnot, then let the market decide, not WotC as a company. If people see a racist or hateful version of D&D out there that someone's profiting off of, well, then don't buy the product. Let the market decide not to buy the product. That should not be in WotC's hands, because at the end of the day, this stuff is subjective. Let's keep going. What's not there? There's no royalty payment, no financial reporting, no license back, no registration, no distinction between commercial and non-commercial. Nothing will impact any content you have already published under OGL 1.0a. That will always be licensed under OGL 1.0a. Your stuff is your stuff. There's a link at the end of this note where you can download a PDF of the proposed OGL 1.2, along with supporting documents for your review and feedback. Before you scroll down and grab it, let me give you more details on what's in there. Protecting D&D's inclusive play experience. As I said above, content more clearly associated with D&D, like classes, spells, and monsters, is what falls under the OGL. You'll see that OGL 1.2 lets us act when offensive or hurtful content is published using the covered D&D stuff. Alright, so here's the problem with that, though. You took out the term race. Okay, you took out the term race because it was inherently racist, when it absolutely was not. The word race is a word with an explicit definition. So already we've seen you in the past take things that are not issues, turn them into issues and upset the player base. So no, I have a problem with the idea that you can just alter and change the OGL for inclusivity or hateful purposes. If anything, you're just going to be hateful towards your player base with your own subjective versions of what's okay, what's right, what's wrong, and I'm not here for it. So, no, I think that this should already be something that out the gate us fans should be pushing back against, because it doesn't matter if their intentions are good, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. TTRPGs and VTTs. OGL 1.2 will only apply to TTRPG content, whether published as books, as electronic publications, or on virtual tabletops, VTTs. Nobody needs to wonder or worry if it applies to anything else. It doesn't. Deauthorizing OGL 1.0a. We know this is a big concern. The Creative Commons license and the open terms of 1.2 are intended to help with that. One key reason why we have to deauthorize, we can't use the protective options in 1.2 if someone can just publish harmful, discriminatory, or illegal content under 1.0a. Okay, illegal doesn't need to be there. If it's illegal, it's illegal. Your original OGL is not going to save someone from doing something illegal. So the harmful or discriminatory prospect, once again, we're already back for the third time now to why that's a problem. You're finding 3 different bullet points to say we don't want D&D to be racist. And while that's all well and good, no one wants anything to be racist, that's for the open market to decide, not for you. So at this point, I'm still Team Paizo and Kobold Press and going with their version of the OGL because it at least doesn't allow any sort of predatory, subjective terms to haunt the players over their shoulder. Very limited license changes allowed. Only 2 sections can be changed once OGL 1.2 is live. How you can cite wizards in your work and how we can contact each other. We don't know what the future holds or what technologies we will use to communicate with each other, so we thought these 2 sections needed to be future-proofed. For completeness, let's sum up what else is in OGL 1.2 and supporting documents. Virtual tabletop policy. We will continue to support VTT usage for both OGL creators and VTT operators. The virtual tabletop policy spells this out. Ownership disputes. You own your content. You don't give Wizards any license back or any ownership disputes. You can sue for breach of contract and more money damages versus holding up products other players are waiting for while we sort it out. No hateful content or conduct. If you include harmful, discriminatory, or illegal content, once again, illegal doesn't matter. If it is illegal, it is illegal. You don't need to put in a contract not to do illegal stuff. At that point, it's in the hands of the criminal side of the law. Or engage in that content publicly. We can terminate your OGL 1.2 license to our content. Creator product badge. You'll have the option to include a badge on your OGL works. Once we get your feedback on the badge, we will create a guide on how to use and display it. Overall, what we're going to do here is give good faith creators the same level of freedom, or greater for things in the Creative Commons, to create TTRPG content. That's been so great for everyone, while giving us the tools to ensure the game continues to become ever more inclusive and welcoming. There's that nasty little I word again. The game has been inclusive since it came out in the 80s. I get it. A bunch of basement-dwelling, overweight white boys are what popularized it, but it never was anti-woman or anti-anyone else. D&D has always been inclusive, because let's face it, we all want to be something else from time to time. Sometimes we just don't want to be in the bodies we're in, or living the life we're living, and fantasy is a great escapist tool for that. If anything, you're now just calling out a problem that didn't exist, a problem that D&D solved purely by its own existence, and I don't know, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and I hope other fans are going to have the same backlash to it as I am. I don't like the idea of bringing race into things, or real-life discrimination into a fantasy game that's made to be an escapism, an outlet for escapism of what really does happen in the real world. Hey, Post-Editing Leon here. I did have the entire new OGL in this video, and I went through it step by step. Then I realized that is super long, and quite frankly, the legal stuff is boring, so I'm cutting out all but the really necessary, or at least what I found necessary parts of the OGL, and going straight from the survey. We got everything we needed to really up to this point, minus something that I found was quite important to hear. So just know that even though you don't see me go through the OGL in this video before I do the survey, I did read over the entirety of the OGL. I want to focus on this line right here. No hateful content or conduct. You will not include content in your licensed works that is harmful, discriminatory, illegal, obscene, or harassing, or engage in conduct that is harmful, discriminating, or illegal, obscene, or harassing. We have the sole right to decide what conduct or content is hateful, and you covenant that you will not contest any such discrimination via suit or any other legal action. This is the biggest problem. This is arguably the single largest issue. The financial stuff in the original OGL, sure, that's one thing. The idea that they're going to take everything that's yours and it's theirs now, the fact that you have to pay a fee if you make over $750,000, all that doesn't matter. This is what matters, because this is complete infringement on your individuality. This is not okay, especially because it is worded as so subjective. We have the sole right to decide what conduct or content is hateful. They could decide that having a fairy with short hair is hateful if fairies traditionally had long hair. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, you probably want to think that they will use common sense and be like, oh, well, they're only going to call things that are very objectively racist as hateful, but we don't know if that's the case or not. We've seen wizards do some pretty awful things in the past. Remember the $1,000 worth of fake magic cards you got for the 30th anniversary 2 months ago? Wizards is not exactly infallible, and there's a whole lot of risk by just allowing this right here. Anyone that is seeing this part of the OGL, when you're doing these surveys that we're about to go over together, absolutely call it out. This cannot stand. Alrighty, well, I have read through the OGL. I hope you guys have as well. Let's continue with the survey. After reading the proposed OGL 1.2, how has your perception of the future Dungeons & Dragons changed compared to before reading OGL 1.2? I'm going to go with much worse. What would need to improve your perception of Dungeons & Dragons future? Complete freedom for fans without the subjective will of WotC or any other body to determine what is and isn't hateful or discriminatory conduct. How would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International? I'm going to say that I relatively understand it, 4 out of 5. My satisfaction is 3. How would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with the content found in the SRD that will be released under the Creative Commons? Once again, about a 4 and a 3. Do you have any other comments about the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 intellectual and or content that will be released under Creative Commons? Honestly, I don't have any sort of comments on that. I think that this is probably as good as the fans are going to get, at least as it currently stands. As somebody who does not use a whole lot of homebrew material from things like D&D Beyond or any other sources, and I don't make any sort of money or D&D content, this doesn't really apply to me, so I'm not going to speak on it like I have some sort of great crusade against it. I'll leave that to people who are more invested in creating their own content that they want to license. How would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with notice of deauthorization? High, and my satisfaction is low. The idea that WotC or any other body could emerge in the future and can deauthorize is one that takes power away from individuals and players and is unacceptable. How would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with the types of content covered by the OGL 1.2? Understanding is great, satisfaction is absolutely low. Number 1. How would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with the content ownership rights in the proposed OGL 1.2? I am going to put 3 on both. I guess my understanding is fine. My understanding is a 5. My satisfaction is a 3 because, again, not being a D&D content creator that, has any sorts of will to license, it is just not something that I care too much about. Hopefully other people are satisfied with it, but it is not something that I cared about to begin with. Therefore, my satisfaction has not changed. How would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with the You Control Your Content section? How would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with the Warranties and Disclaimers section? And how would you rate your level of understanding and your level of satisfaction with the Modification or Termination section? Absolute 1 low for the Termination section. The fact that WotC can subjectively ban or remove content based on their own whims and internal beliefs on what is cause for termination is inherently flawed and has no business being in an agreement like this. How would you rate your level of understanding and satisfaction with the virtual tabletop policy? I understand it fine. I have no qualms with it because I don't do any virtual tabletop gaming, so I do not care. Hopefully those of you that do will answer this accordingly. Have you used the OGL 1.0A or previous versions of the ODL to create third-party content? Only homebrews and nothing for sale, so I will say no. Do you want to create third-party content for Dungeons & Dragons in the future? I personally do not. You can save your answers and come back using a link. Okay, so what other feedback do you have for us related to the Open Gaming License or otherwise? Oh, here's the part where we get to make them shake in their swift foot boots, everybody. Put what you absolutely hate about this And really, what you hate about WotC in general, because they are the bane of tabletop players and card gamers everywhere at this point, and make sure that you let them know, assuming you agree, that you do not agree with them on their hateful discrimination policy due to the inherent subjective nature of such an awful policy. Let's jot this down, and then we'll probably wrap this up. The idea that WotC can subjectively decide what is hateful or discriminatory in an ever-changing culture, rather than letting the free market or the market of ideas make this decision, is something that I as a player and many other players cannot and will not stand for. The answer is OGL 1.0a or nothing unless you remove your oppressive, subjective, hateful content clause. That is my answer to this. And the reason is such is, remember, there was an instance online a couple years ago about how male-only D&D groups were being banned on D&D Beyond. If you're looking for a male-only group, that was completely banned as being hateful and discriminatory. However, female-only D&D groups were absolutely lauded and allowed to exist on D&D Beyond, and even complimented by wizards. This is the level of subjective right versus wrong, and what is and isn't allowed, and what isn't considered discrimination that we have seen from them in the past, and that we will continue to see if we allow this clause to stay in D&D and stay in the OGL. Fight this and refuse it. You've seen me submit the survey. Let me know what you guys have done with your surveys. I think that is going to be it for us here at Words of Paradise. That being said, this isn't the usual type of content I normally do. If you want to see what we usually do, which is nerdy news, you can check us out. Please subscribe to the channel. We cover Dungeons & Dragons, Magic the Gathering, anime, Marvel movies, you name it. But you can find it here in the Nerdosphere. Until then, please subscribe, because this has been Words of Paradise.